Today's conversation is going to be with Maren Njøs Kurdøl. What a beautiful name. What a beautiful person. She's genuinely good. Comes from the heart. She is a politician. She works for the Red Party in communications at the Parliament building here in Oslo. Well, not here in Oslo, but in Oslo. She's also a local politician in Vestfold, the Vestfold region. She's also a powerlifter. This was a great conversation. She's very inspiring, and I'm glad to have spoken with her. Check it out. This is the Coming Home Podcast with John Allen. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for inviting me.
You've been kind of on the run today. You were out doing whatever, and you're swinging through here on your way home, or?
Yeah, I've been at work. I work at the Norwegian Parliament, and then I've had a step class because I used to work as a personal trainer and fitness instructor, and I'm still doing a little bit of that. And now I'm going home because I have a political meeting in Vestfold tomorrow. So,
and there's that dynamic life that I've been kind of observing from afar for the last 4 or 5 years. I've kind of known you peripherally as a powerlifter. I think we waved and said hi a couple of times, and I think I congratulated you on a deadlift or something.
Yeah.
And so that was quite some time ago, 4 or 5 years, maybe longer.
Yeah. It's been some time since we met at the powerlifting.
Yeah, because I haven't competed since 2019. So I've been kind of...
We used to bump into each other at meets. So,
but the whole time I was interested in you. Like I said, I think you're a very dynamic person. You have many aspects to your life, you know, the political thing, the powerlifting thing. You were a manager at a
gym.
At a gym, weren't you?
Yeah. Mm.
So you've stepped into several things to be as young as you are. You started your interest in politics. I read in an article you were like 12 years old. How did that come about?
I'm not really sure because I think, like many children, have like a very big sense of justice. I think.
Oh, yes, they do.
Yeah, they're very into that. Yes. And for me,
he got to eat candy. Why can't I?
Yeah,
you know,
and it kind of just stuck with me. So that, and also like I care a lot for the environment, for animals' rights. When I was
it's a big part of your political party, is it not?
Yeah, at least
for some of you, you're not a monolith. And let me just say, you are in the Rødt party, which is the Red Party here in Norway.
Yeah, so far left in Norwegian politics. Yeah,
about as far left as you can get in modern Norwegian politics.
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah,
which I think is interesting. That's an interesting place to be. In Norway, the social democracy. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to ask you a few questions about that. We're going to talk about that. It interests me. So yeah.
But I guess so at the age of 12, I got involved in like a youth organization for environmental
that's
politics. Young. Yeah, and then at the age of 13 or 14, I got involved in like the Red Youth, which is the youth organization for the party that I'm in now. And I think it was 18 or 19 the first time I ran for local elections.
Yeah.
And I've been running for elections ever since.
Did you win the first time you ran?
No, I got like...
and what position did you run for?
I was quite far down on the list. So I got in like as a replacement when people were sick. But I met a lot in meetings.
I'm sure you were fairly active.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, as a replacement, you know, people do get sick. People can't make certain meetings and functions and whatnot. So again, there's that interesting dynamic exposure to quite a serious batch of subject matter.
Yeah.
Politics is a serious thing. Some people don't take it very seriously, but like it or not, politics affect all of our lives, thereby making it a very serious thing.
Yeah.
So you've been a serious person since your childhood.
Yeah, like really. And I think also, actually my local newspaper I grew up in Lillehammer in Norway.
I was married in Lillehammer.
Oh my God, is it true?
Yes, we had our, have you ever heard of Nedre Berg Gård?
Yeah.
That's where we got married.
Oh my God.
That's where my wife chose it, and that's where we got married.
Awesome. Yeah, I grew up there. It's known for the
something good about you.
Olympics
in 94. And my wedding.
Yeah, and your wedding. But the local newspaper called me because they visited my school when I was like 10 or 11, or maybe even younger. And we talked about politics. And they had I was the only one interested in politics already back then. So they had made an interview with the very young Maren, and I was quoted that I wanted to be a politician when I grew up. And yeah, now I am. So it's like it's been
dream come true.
Yeah, dreams come true.
But was that actually something you wanted? You know, with this position you have now, this activity in politics, did you really want that back then, or did you feel back then that this was just a passing interest, as kids have?
I'm not sure, but I've always felt. I want to say this without sounding too cliche or something, but
we love cliche.
I've always felt that both being born and raised in Norway, I have good health. I have. It's been fairly easy for me at school. I felt like I have some sort of privilege, and that being born with those opportunities, I have some sort of responsibility to change the world for a better cause. And that's
a beautiful sentiment.
Yeah, well, I felt
a lot of people
forever.
Are kind of and a lot of people are selfish and they don't think of those kind of things. But you had those kind of thoughts already as a 11, 12-year-old.
Yeah, and it stuck with me. So I think, already back then I was interested.
You were on a path.
Yeah.
You had an interest.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you were on your way back from the parliament, the Norwegian parliament. Tell us what you do there.
I work with communication and
the communications representative for your party, right?
Yes, for my party. So I'm
big
like,
job.
It's
gotta have your words in place. Have to say the right things. You have to think of sound bites.
Yeah, well, I'm not really saying them. It's the representatives saying them, but yeah, and I handle a lot of media and press, and
it's a big job.
I like it a lot. It doesn't feel that important, but I guess.
Oh wow! When you think about the influence of media on everybody's hearts and minds, like it or not, when you think of the influence that media has, being the communications representative, in some sense, the mouthpiece for the party. I don't know if you write things, statements that are going to go out, press releases.
Sometimes we do.
So you're kind of the mouthpiece at times for the party. That's a serious job.
Yeah, well, maybe.
but I think this is the classic Norwegian modesty.
Yeah.
Look at her blushing. I don't know if you can see it in the light, but she's blushing. They do that when we compliment them. Yeah. But think about that. You are the mouthpiece for a major political party in Norway. That's quite the serious job. I don't think a lot of people think about that. You don't even think about it so much. It's just become routine. Doesn't keep you up at night. You don't worry about.
Not
I love
much,
it.
No,
I love it. They make them very calm up in Lillehammer.
Yeah.
So how long have you had that position?
Now it's been a year and a half, because after.
And you're already used to it. You're already laid back about it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Has it been a year and a half or maybe even more? No, a year and a half, because after the last elections, so now we have just recently had local elections, but elections for government before that, we went from having one representative to 8. So they were like...
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah. It was almost...
and that's on a national basis.
Yeah, that's
correct?
on a national basis.
How did you guys do locally, though?
And this time it was
a little
down from last elections, but still
on a national basis you guys went up. Well, you guys are ahead of the left party, Venstre, are you not? Yes. Yeah.
I don't really remember, because the Kristelig
Folkeparti, the Christian party, you guys
way
are ahead of them. Yeah. So things are changing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you talk about the change? Here's what I find interesting, and I don't want you to take this as an attack question or a gotcha question. I sincerely want to know what you think. Norway is a social democracy. In America, we think, oh my gosh, those communists. Mm-hmm. We think Norway is just, as far left as you can get, which it's not, but that's the mindset for coming from the United States. I know better. I've been here for 21 years, but my friends think it's very, very left leaning. And then here you are, your party, the Red Party, Rødt, and you guys are you are the furthest left that a modern political party is in Norway. Yeah. And yet you guys are, and again, don't take, but numbers are real, and you guys are in the lower rankings as far as the number of votes you guys get on a national basis.
Yeah.
What do you guys in your party feel about that?
The thing is, we used to be so much lower, so we're quite happy
Again,
now. Yeah,
there has been a development. From one representative to eight. So there is a development. But that question that I posed to you I've always wondered about that from the beginning when I first came here and started getting interested in Norwegian politics. How is it? How would you explain that the most left-leaning party in Norway is so far down on the rankings among this left-leaning social democracy called Norway? How is that?
I think there are many reasons, probably, and
give a couple.
Yeah, I will say that I don't have like any answer with, but
I'll say this: I think it's odd. I ask because I think it's very odd, and I don't see. Me personally, I don't see anything that your party represents that would make me automatically do this, stiff arm it. But a lot of people do stiff arm the party simply because it is so far left leaning.
Yeah.
But I don't understand it personally. I just wondering how you.
I think some of it is history. So I've been in this party for almost 20 years now, and the roots of the party is less democratic than the party is today, and I think a lot
of people today will just say, "Oh, the Red Party, they're communists."
Yeah, and a lot of people will still judge us on that basis, which is a shame. I think
so. Times change.
Yeah,
we can compare the way it is in America. Right now it's the Democrats who are left and the Republicans are right. When I was born, it was kind of the opposite. Well, before I'm born in '69, but in the from '64 and before. It was the Republicans who fought against slavery. It was the Republicans who stood for the working man and whatnot. So things change. There is historical context that a lot of people don't think about when it comes to your party, the Red Party.
Yeah. And I think also it would be a lie to say that we have politics for everyone. It's like, obviously, some people will get... some people will have to pay more taxes with our politics.
Oh, I see what you mean. Your party is not for everyone. Okay, I got it. Yeah,
and also some of the people that we are not for are powerful people with a lot of money owning businesses. So
the industry machine. They don't like the Red Party. I wonder why.
So and obviously, you will have less money, and you will not have the same. You cannot own so much. I can remember. You mentioned taxes. I can remember when I moved here. Before I moved here, I was like, "Oh my gosh, they pay so much in taxes in Norway." Yeah. But very quickly, and I'm talking like after a couple of months of working, and I started working pretty much right away. I got a job right away when I got here, and after a couple of paychecks, I never thought. I don't think about the taxes. It is what it is. What I do notice in relation to those taxes is what I get for paying those taxes. Yeah.
What does the Red Party stand for when it comes to taxes? You mentioned yourself that under a Red leadership, Norwegians would pay more taxes. What would that tax money go to?
The richest Norwegians would pay more taxes.
Say it again. Into the camera, please.
The richest Norwegians would pay more taxes.
and I would like to ask anyone who is not a millionaire or a billionaire, please tell me what's wrong with that.
Yeah. The thing is, we actually, there are different ways to pay taxes. We pay it from our income. But some people pay it from, you say fortune in English? Like from your wealth,
assets,
maybe? Or
your wealth assets,
And the thing is, there are many very rich people in Norway
who don't.
If we have no taxing of wealth, they would not pay taxes at all.
Yeah.
And
that's a problem.
Yeah, that is a problem.
You want to talk about being fair? Let's be fair. The rich need to pay their taxes.
Yeah.
We see the same thing in America where someone like Elon Musk is paying a much lower percentage of taxes than I am.
Yeah,
and people say, well, he makes more, so he is paying more on paper. Okay, I get that, but is it fair?
Yeah. And I'm like, you don't need billions of kroners to live. So
no, but I wouldn't even take it that far. When I just look at it on the basis of things of fairness, when I just look at that, I have that as the foundation of my thoughts on taxes. Let's just be fair.
Yeah.
Why should I pay 30% and someone like Elon Musk or whoever pays 5% or less? It's not fair. I don't see how that could be made to be fair.
Yeah.
So we pay a lot of taxes in Norway, but there's still a lot of unfairness because just like in America, the rich don't pay the same percentage.
Exactly.
And the Red Party would fix that if you guys were in charge.
Yeah, well, that's our primary politics. Yeah, and the thing is, many people have a good life in Norway. It's like, obviously,
yes.
We have a middle class that's quite large. It's
yes.
better to live in Norway than in many
Most
other countries.
Places, yeah.
But I still have things that I want to be better.
Yeah.
It's like, for example, dental care. It's not free in Norway, and it's very expensive to go to the dentist.
It is.
Yeah, it is. So that's one thing that I would really like to use some of that tax money to fix, is to make dental care free, because people with low income, it's like I've had conversations with people that have pulled out their own teeth with like...
I've heard the stories.
Because they can't afford going to the dentist because... In Norway. And yeah, that's a shame. And that's the things that I want to fix.
Well, you said something interesting. You said that you mentioned that Norway is a great place to live, and it is. I love it. I'm quite fortunate to live here. It's a great place to live. Things are going well in Norway, but you said you want to make it better. And I'm glad you said that, you, an ethnic Norwegian, because I, the foreigner, the visitor here, when I say things like that, when I say that on my show or on social media, whatever, I get attacked. I get told, hey, you're just a visitor. Stop complaining. And it's not complaining. I believe that the two things can go hand in hand. I can love living here, but also wish that it was better.
Yeah.
And not just wish that it was better, but actively work towards making it better, which I believe I do.
Yeah.
Some people don't appreciate that. Some people don't even agree, and that's fine. But I believe that living here and appreciating it can go hand in hand with also wanting it to be better.
Exactly. There is, you've probably noticed this as well, that a lot of Norwegians are quite hypocrites when it comes to if any immigrants want to change anything in Norway, they will just say, go back to your own country. Yes. But if a Norwegian says it, it's more like, oh yeah, well, you're like involved citizen. And
that's just, to me, it's a strange social dynamic where it creates an us and them type of thing. Okay, yes, I am not a Norwegian citizen. I am a visitor here. I'm an American citizen. But I am a legal resident. And I am allowed to vote. I just got done voting locally. What was that, 2 weeks ago? I didn't vote for Red, though. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
We'll see what happens with this conversation. But so I have the right to vote in local elections. Does that not give me a voice?
Yeah.
Or I have a voice. Does it not give me the right to put my voice out there in the mix, and my wish and my actual work towards making things better here?
Yeah.
I don't understand how, in a democratic society, in a fair society, I don't understand how people could say anything other than welcome aboard. What do you think? What do you feel? What are you doing? Maybe that's the most important thing. What are you doing? Because a lot of people, Norwegian or not, they do talk.
Yeah.
But not everyone gets active.
Yeah. And that's the
laziness.
Problem.
That's being spoiled. That's the taking for granted all of the goodness that is in Norway.
Yeah, I think it's that for some, and for others, it's more like apathy, or they've just given up. They feel like nothing they're doing is changing anything. It's like...
I hear you. I'm going to be a little mean, though, and say that some of those people who have given up and they feel that whatever they're going to do doesn't have any meaning, I would ask them, but what have you done? Have you just complained? Or have you run for political positions?
maybe some of
Have
them
you campaigned? Have you
think,
contributed in some way?
Yeah, I think some of them have voted and felt let down by politicians. But
which is normal because politicians let us down every day.
Oh, yes.
But what's the next step after voting and being let down? Getting active.
Yeah.
At the very least, latching on to that political figure that you do believe in and helping them in their campaign in some way, volunteering or maybe taking a paid position. I don't know what the possibilities are, but the thing is to get more active. And I don't see very many people. If I can criticize, now I'm going to catch hell from everybody, but if I can criticize Norwegian society, there just aren't very many people who get active. There's a lot of talk, but very often very little action beyond voting.
And there is a problem that, in my opinion, too few people vote. There was like 60% now in the local elections. That's quite low.
But as an American, I love the voting system here in Norway.
Oh, yeah, because it's more inclusive.
It's much more inclusive. In America, you have a party, the Republican Party, going out of their way to make it difficult for people to vote, getting in the way of that legal democratic process. Whereas here in Norway, it couldn't be any easier.
All parties agree that we want people to use the right to vote,
and it's just easy.
Yeah.
I think I was in and out in 5 minutes to vote. I'm not saying too much detail about what it's about because I'm going to do an episode of my show later to talk about that process because I just think it's beautiful in its simplicity. It's just so easy to vote, as it should be. And compared to what it is in America, it's night and day.
Am I right that Americans in jail cannot vote?
If you are convicted of a felony,
you cannot vote.
I believe, now that's not a federal law, but individual states have that law. I don't think that's a federal law, but individual states do have that law that if you are convicted, and there's a historical context to this that a lot of people don't want to hear, but it goes back to the days of slavery. Right after slavery, all of those Black Americans were freed, at least on paper. That's a large voting block.
Yeah.
How do you suppress that voting block? Well, you put them in jail and then you pass laws that if you have a felony record, you don't, I'm speaking very broadly on this historical context, because certain things happen during certain years, but that's basically the end result is that all of these people shove them into prison, give them that felony record, and you're removing a large portion of an opposing voting block. Yeah. That's what's happening.
Yep. Yeah. It was a real shock for me the first time I learned. It's like, wow, you call yourself a democracy?
It's still a shock to me, and I'm an American.
Yeah.
I've been involved and aware of politics my entire adult life, and it still shocks me that a system can actually promote something like that because it is systemic. It's another word people don't like to hear. So there's systemic justice, but there's also systemic injustice. Yeah. If you believe in the one, you have to believe the other exists. Yeah. Am I right? But we're quite fortunate in Norway that we don't have to worry about things like that. But can you name a major injustice or a major flaw in the Norwegian socio-political system? Because you guys look at things differently in Red, and you look at, and I'll say it's a way that I like. I think it's impressive. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, we do know that you inherit a lot of things from your parents. So one thing we know is that the school system, it reproduces social and economic differences. So if your parents are highly educated, you will not only be helped better with your homework, but they have a different network, can get you like a job part-time, and they can get you, help you write applications.
A lot more doors get opened a lot easier.
Yeah, so it's not only that if your parents are highly educated, they will more likely have a good paid job. So they will provide you with all the things you need, like material stuff, but they also have the network. They also will help you with your homework. And in that way, and our school system, I love it. It's free for everyone, but it still reproduces that inequality. And that's a huge problem, I think.
That's very interesting that you mentioned that. I worked as a teacher. My first job in Norway, I was a project leader at a high school, ungdomsskole. And then later on, I split my time between that project, and I was also a music teacher. So I still have a lot of friends who are teachers and actually worked in that system. And what you were saying, to me, was very evident. It was very obvious that was an issue that was rarely spoken about and certainly rarely dealt with in the form of policy change to make things better. And again, that surprises me because at least in America, when we think left-leaning government, we think that those kind of things are taken care of. Republicans will actually look at that as a flaw, that those kind of things are taken care of. But here in Norway, it's not. Norway, this social democracy, it's very interesting that your party, the Red Party, Rødt, is the only party that consistently, of course you hear other politicians say it, especially around the time to vote, but you guys are consistent on that. That's one thing that makes you guys a little bit different than the other parties here.
I like to think so. Yeah.
I think that's a justifiable compliment. I can give that compliment and I can back it up. It's what we see in the daily political sphere out there. Maybe you have something to do with that as a communications boss for your party.
Well, at least we try to it's not even like a strategy, but that is our main politics. So that's what we want to communicate.
That's the thing. The other people pick that up as some sort of strategic move to mention something like that, but it's not strategy with you guys. It is actually part of what your party is founded on.
Yeah, it's like the core of our politics.
This equality of opportunity.
Yeah.
There's a talking point among Republicans, and surprisingly to me anyway, among also some Norwegians, that when we talk about equality of opportunity, those of us who are left-leaning, we're automatically talking about there should be an equality of result. But that's not what we're saying. We're saying the playing field should be level. We're saying that everyone should have equal opportunity. Of course, it's up to the individual whether or not they take up that opportunity and try to do something with it. And to a certain degree, it's up to the individual whether or not they succeed in their endeavors to take advantage of opportunities. But we're not saying that just because you and I go to school, I should automatically have the same job opportunities as you. You know, there are things, personal merit and performance and whatnot.
I get that a lot.
I was going to say, can you talk about some of the things? There's a lot of finger pointing at you guys. I'm not going to say who it is, but I just mentioned yesterday evening that you would be coming in and I was going to be talking with you. And they're like, oh, communist. You know, that word, they said a lot more than that, but that word came out.
Yeah.
So how do you handle this finger pointing, this labeling? These preconceived notions about what your party stands for?
Yeah, well, I think the communist sort of mark, I get it a lot, and also people will drag it with old dictators like Stalin and Mao. But for me, I wasn't born, so I usually just say that, like, you're dragging along some history about my party, but I wasn't even born then.
It was before your time.
Yeah, this has nothing to do with our politics today. But also, what I think is interesting, I also get a lot what you're saying, that we want everyone to be the same, and we don't. But there is a difference in understanding. Because I feel like some people would say, well, we have equal opportunities in Norway because school is free for everyone. But they are blind to the fact that you're not at the same starting point when you get to that school.
That is so important. The starting point. You cannot disregard the starting point. You just can't, especially with children.
Yeah.
And thinking of their family situation, their economy, finances and whatnot, you can't ignore that.
Exactly. And it doesn't mean I want everyone to be equal or have the same result, but I will acknowledge that some people have privileges that other people don't have. And I think as a society, we should try to even that out.
Yeah.
Both because it's fair, but to be honest, it's better for the whole society as well.
Yeah.
we will save money in the long term and people will be happier. And yeah.
I think it's interesting that word privilege causes such a strong defensive reaction from a lot of people on the political and social right. Yeah. You might be a very, very far right, right wing, almost some sort of radical right wing person, MAGA, Trump supporter, or far right wing Norwegian. And let's take the Norwegian, for example, and you're so proud of Norway. And Norway this, and Norway is the best, and you foreigner, you utlending, and this and that, and Norway, hiya. And then when you talk about privilege, there's no privilege. Well, hold on. I thought you just got done saying so much about how much, and I'm kind of taking it, to the, to that far polar existence, but it is, or that far polar, that far right part of the polarity of socio-political situation here in Norway. But people like that do exist. They refuse to admit that such a thing as privilege exists, and yet we can see it every day.
Yeah.
Especially if we go back to our schools and look at them when they start first grade. Where is that starting point?
Yeah.
I'm kind of babbling and rambling on, but it's an issue that I'm very much preoccupied with, and I guess I feel a little frustration in that. I guess I can identify with the Red Party, one of the smaller parties, and you guys have this stamp on your forehead based upon conceptions about what you guys were about, a generation ago. And I kind of get the same thing, stamp on my forehead, the literal color of my skin, the fact that I'm not born here, and they just, here you are, you're in this part, and you better be quiet. You can't say too much because you are. And you, the Red Party, you've always been this way, so you better not say too much because that's not what Norway is these days. Yeah. So.
Yeah. And then, another thing I would like to mention, because you asked about inequality and stuff, health is another big issue that we don't talk too much about. But if you live in poverty in Norway, compared to someone wealthy with a higher education, you're likely to live approximately 10 years less. You die 10 years earlier. Yeah. And probably your last years are also like with lower quality because you have more health issues. And that is also like a huge thing that I think, well, also for me, that I've been working a lot with health in my job as well as a trainer. And I see it. I see who can afford healthy food. I see who can afford a personal trainer, but also the emotional and psychological sort of hardship it is to have low income all the time. Yeah. And I think that we should talk more about that as well and try to do something about our health politics too.
I had a guy on my show. I call him friend and brother these days. And I finally got to meet him face to face. He came here to Norway to visit his brother, another American who lives here in Norway. His name is Dr. Howell Wexler. He has another job now, but he used to work at the Center for Disease Control, and he was in charge of the department that studied child health and education. And he talked about this with me, about how money is health. Yeah. Or the lack of money is the lack of acceptable health.
Even in a country in Norway.
Even in places like the USA and Norway, and here in Norway where healthcare is pretty much doggone free. Yeah. So think about what it's like then, where when we have people who come here to Norway. I'm an immigrant myself, but I come from a place of privilege. What about the immigrants who come here from different lands in the Middle East or from the African continent, and who knows what kind of trauma they already have that they're bringing here with them, and they get into a situation where it might be a year or more before they can start working and making their own money. That's health right there. That creates a photograph, a snapshot of their health that can turn into a film rather than a snapshot. Yeah. And we have to take those kind of things into consideration because when your health is bad, there's so much more that's going to be bad as well. There's going to be more incidences of crime. And that's not a moral issue in those cases. It's a health issue. It's a financial issue. Yeah. But people don't talk about that. You guys do. and there's a few other politicians in other parties who do, but again, I think they do it as some sort of strategic routine, whereas you guys, it's in your core values as a political party to talk about these things.
Yeah.
How do you guys stay true to that? It must be hard. In other words, and again, I don't take this the wrong way, but you guys are struggling to get more numbers. Isn't there a temptation to kind of step outside your party plan and at least try something different, something that's more mainstream Norwegian politics, so that you guys can maybe pull in some more votes? That's kind of cynical, but is there ever that kind of internal discussion?
Yeah, our politics is...
Not everybody follows the party line.
No, and our politics is made up by our members. So there are many discussions in the member group all the time about these things. And
now, when you say member group, is this a committee at the top of the party?
No, because we're like organized very where everyone, if you live in a municipality or a city, you will have like your own group there, and you discuss and you bring your person or candidate to the...
So you're in Vestfold.
Yeah.
Holmestrand.
Yeah.
Beautiful town, by the way. There was a time where my wife and I, for a long time, really, really thought about living there before we bought our first house. But it's beautiful there. But it's a very small community. Yeah. So I would imagine that when you guys get together to talk about these things, it's not just some dude in the same party as you. It might be your neighbor or a relative.
Well, we gather members of the party to discuss these things. Maybe we're 8, 10, 15 people, and we have long, good discussions. And we bring our opinion to like the central party. So it's like a very democratic way of choosing the politics. There's
a consensus with what you guys stand for. In other words, it starts at the grassroots level locally, and then it's brought up to the... And I think that's a very... in America, we might think, oh, that's cute that they can do that because, the parties are so big. It's a huge country and all that stuff. But I don't think it's impossible to do that, even though there are so many more people in the United States, and yet it doesn't happen.
I think for me, it's very important to keep that tradition, because the fact that...
That's the honesty of politics, which is missing in many places.
So many other parties, and I'd say most of the large parties in Norwegian politics, they are run more top-down, whereas we're run from bottom up. And I think that makes the whole difference, because, as you say, our members out in all of Norway, they talk to their neighbors, and some of them are unemployed, some of them work in a hospital, whereas if me, who work in the parliament, or just the people that work in the political sphere, if we were to decide the politics, it gets like a bubble where you are more... you care more about what other politicians think than what your members or your voters think.
Well, an example comes to mind. I'm going to call him out. The top of the Arbeiderparti, the Workers' Party here in Norway, he is notoriously talked about in the sense that he has no connection not to his voters. Not to the people in his party, not to his voters, not to the greater Norwegian society, because he has been so far removed from those one-to-one conversations at the dinner table. He's lived a life of privilege and wealth, and I'm not saying necessarily this is what I think, but this is a common narrative that I don't think is very far from an actuality, that this man is a little too long far removed for too long from the everyday people in the homes, in the streets, in the job places of Norway. Yeah. And you guys work actively to prevent those kind of things from happening.
And I think you need mechanisms to prevent it, because I have noticed for myself, because I used to work at a gym earlier. Now I work full time with politics, and I talk to journalists. I talk to other politicians. I talk to other people in the my party a lot. And I need the perspective from like the more normal people. So I try to actively I still teach some classes at the gym. I still want to hang out with my friends that have different jobs, because they see things very, very differently. And I need that perspective.
Well, you do need that perspective. We all need that perspective. But I think especially people who work in the world of politics, you guys need that perspective, because if all you speak with is other politicians, those are not the everyday people with the everyday issues. Yep. They're not. I mean, they can be, but in general, they're not. So perspective is important. But being there in the Parliament building, and that is your full-time job, you speak to a lot of different politicians. Can you tell me a politician outside of your own party who is a fun politician to run into and have a short or longer conversation with?
A lot of them are actually. Yeah. Well, the truth is, most of them are pretty nice people and fun to talk to and really kind. I'd say, can I say this about her?
Sure.
Yeah, I think so. So
I'm going to tell you a story too. So tell yours. I got a story about a politician.
It's very cute though. The leader of the Socialist Left Party. So they're quite close to us politics wise. Yeah. Kirsti Bergstø. I met her at in the wardrobe to the gym in the Storting in the Parliament, and I had forgotten my socks. It's very not fun to work out without your socks in your shoes. And she just gave me her socks. It was really fun. I stood there complaining, and she was like, I have an extra pair. And I thought, how am I going to get this back to you? No, you can take this. Women, we have to take care of each other,
That is awesome. There you go. There's a nice story. Yeah. I met, now I don't follow, or I'm sorry, I don't agree with any of the politics that come out of Fremskrittspartiet. None, zero. I don't like what they stand for. But some years ago, I want to say this was in 2014 or 15, I was working at some place. I'm not going to say what it was. And there were some politicians who came. This was at a state-run organization I was working. And some politicians came through, or a politician came through, rather, to check in on things and just take a tour of where we were. So I was standing there working, and Siv Jensen comes in, and she was in this same room where I was doing my thing, and she kind of did a double take at me. And I'm a big guy now, but I was really big. This was actually before my first powerlifting competition here. I was bodybuilding. Oh, so I was very lean and jacked, as they say. So Siv Jensen, and she's known for, I think she's like jiu-jitsu or something or some kind of martial arts, and she works out and stuff. So, and she looked me up and down, and she says in Norwegian, du er stor og sterk. You look big and strong. And so I smiled, and I looked her up and down, and I said, you're not so bad yourself. Yeah. and she laughed. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, that, what a charming little exchange there. And then I saw her again about 8 months later at the airport at Gardermoen. And she actually stopped and recognized me. And she said that. She said, oh, I husker that. I remember you, she says. And I said, oh, I guess I remember you too. So it was that same type of tone. Yeah. And stood there and talked for a couple minutes. And it showed the human side of her. Now, I think she's been, and her party has been quite brutal. Yeah. I think, especially on social issues. The way I look at it, you can believe what you want politically, but when your social views start to actually harm people, as I believe her party has done, that's a totally different thing. So to me, it was very interesting to get that human side.
But I say there are kind and nice people in all parties.
Isn't it? This is what I'm getting at. Isn't it true that most people are good? But why is it that goodness sometimes takes a back seat to one's political beliefs? I think we're seeing the Republican Party do that. And I'm not talking about the people who support the Republican Party, the regular people, the MAGA people. I'm talking about the politicians of the Republican Party. Some of them are good people, but we're hearing more and more stories from other Republicans and some Democrats saying, yeah, but Senator so-and-so from the Republican Party tells me all the time behind the scenes that Trump is, damaging the country, and that they don't believe this piece of legislation that they brought through, but they can't say anything because they'll lose their position. So their goodness, their humanity, their compassion takes a back seat to their politics.
I'm not really, American politics a lot more than me. And I'd say, I would guess that there's more prestige and more money and more power involved. Absolutely. Yes to all three. Yeah. But I have also seen that the longer you stay in politics, and at least if you're in a party, one of the largest parties where you can get positions, where you can get power, where I also see that there is a lot of more prestige into everything, and it's really hard for them to admit that they've done anything wrong. Yeah, which for me, I don't understand it. I would say I want politicians
I understand they don't want to lose that prestige.
Yeah, but still, as a normal person, wouldn't you like to have politicians that could admit that they've done something wrong and change their opinion?
Yeah. But that's where I get into what I said about how their humanity or their goodness, their kindness, their heart and compassion, they let their party politics and what that means get in front of that. I can't admit I was wrong. Oh boy, was I wrong, but I can't admit it because I will lose my money, my position. I won't be on the news anymore in a positive light and all of these things. And we're seeing it to a large degree in the United States. How often do you think that happens here in Norway? You say it happens in the larger parties, and I'm sure it does. I know it does. But how prevalent how often do you think that?
It's hard for me.
Do you think it has corrupted Norwegian politics to any degree, or is it maybe not that bad yet?
No, I don't think it's that bad, in my opinion. But I think it's a mix of you don't want to sort of miss the ansikt, lose
face, lose your honor,
and
get embarrassed,
and you need to play your cards right to get the positions you want. And also I think there is an element of just living in another reality. I think we see that now with in Høyre, the right party in Norway.
Oh boy.
Yeah, there's
scandal today.
Because the husband of the former prime minister and also the leader of the right party, he's been trading stocks
that he's not supposed to have been trading, allegedly.
Yeah.
He got caught.
Yeah.
And it looks, well, I guess it's a question of what exactly do we believe, because Arne Solberg says she didn't know.
Yeah, but it's her responsibility to know.
And it is, and it is. I don't know, and I'm not a hater. I don't follow I don't agree with most of their politics either. But I guess I feel a little sympathy for her because I think her husband did lie to her. Of course, there's a question: when did she find out? Yeah. Did she know this before the most recent voting session, the most recent elections? Did she know? Nobody knows. Time will tell. They're investigating that. But the way it stands now, I feel sorry for her. Her husband was lying to her like that.
Because she is really good with communication. So,
she sure is. Maybe you fooled me, Arne. I don't know. Maybe you've got me fooled. I don't know.
But even if
I tend to believe her when she says she didn't know.
And it can be true that she didn't know, but
we'll see.
It was her duty to know.
Absolutely.
And that's the serious part. But regardless of that, this whole thing, because he has been trading stocks for 1.8 million kroners or something. It's it's so much money. And she said,
that's a lot of chocolate.
I didn't notice. It was only small amounts.
Yeah.
And that's also telling me, like, you live in a totally different reality. So it's not just about positions and power. It's also your reality is very far from what a normal person's reality is. And I think that affects how you act in politics.
And that's what happens with these career politicians. Yeah. She's been in it for 30 years at least.
Yeah.
And you kind of lose touch with reality. You've definitely lost touch with reality if you don't think that these millions of kroner that your husband has traded for is is a lot of money. That's I don't know. It's I find myself comparing American politics with Norwegian politics, fully recognizing that they are worlds apart. And yet there are some similarities. What do you see in American politics that you hope never happens here in Norway?
Oh, well, a lot of things, I'd say.
The biggest thing, the thing that sticks out the most to you.
I really hope that money doesn't have that much to say, because
so far it doesn't.
Yeah,
so far.
Yeah, because of course, like the right party, they have like their rich uncles, and they have their budgets are way higher than ours. But in the States, it's like you can't run for elections if you're not rich.
You've got to have that money behind you.
Yeah, but here everyone can actually run for elections, and especially in local elections, it's quite easy if you have the time, if you invest the time, and you're passionate, you will get a spot on the list, and you can sit in the local council.
And I think that people who run for politics in Norway, they do it, in general, they do it for a more genuine reason. In other words, they really want to make a difference. It's not for the money, because especially local politicians aren't paid that much here.
To be honest, I'd say like all local politicians, at least in smaller, maybe in the city, you can get
in Oslo,
some career.
Or even here in Drammen,
in larger cities. But for the most of the part, all the people running for local elections, regardless of the party, they're like local heroes because they spend so much time and it doesn't pay that well. And also they get a lot of shit on social media, and it's quite hard as well because
it's brutal sometimes.
And like in the municipalities, you have so many important tasks, like you take care of elderly, school, kindergarten, but you have very little money because it's the state that stands for the funding. So it's quite hard job, and you get a lot of shit. And I'd say, oh my God, it's your heroes to put in that effort.
It's I truly believe that Norwegian politicians, especially at the local level, they're doing it for a more genuine reason than back in the States. I agree with you. I think that the money poison in American politics, that is the thing that I hope the most never comes to Norway. Norwegian politics, we can debate how effective Norwegian politics are, but I do believe it's much more genuine than it is in the States. Even with all of the bad things, there are career politicians here in Norway who are less genuine than others, but for the most part, Norwegian politics are much more genuine than back in the States.
I would think so.
I want to wind this down. You don't have that much time. You've got a train to catch.
Yeah, I haven't really checked the...
It's 7:25. Coming to the end of our discussion here. We've been at it for almost an hour. Everybody that I bring in here, I ask them to do two things for me. You didn't know you were going to come here and work, did you?
No,
thought you were done.
I'm fine.
I want to ask you, I'm going to say 4 words, and I'm going to ask you to finish that sentence. Just one sentence, put a period at the end of it. Okay? Maren Njøs Kurdøl is
a human being.
A human being, above all else.
Yeah, I guess.
Well, I think you're a pretty doggone cool one. I've been watching you. No, that's kind of creepy. No, but I have noticed.
I put a lot of things out on social media, so it's not really creepy. I'm like,
I have been. We have been. I have seen a lot of the things you put out on social media. I've seen you at the powerlifting competitions and whatnot. I've read articles about you and about your party and whatnot. And I think you're one of the people out there who is doing this politics thing from a genuine place of origin.
Thank you.
I truly believe that, and I think you're on your way to doing. You're already doing good things. I mean, that's a lot of trust that your party puts into you to be in charge of communications. But I think you're going to go on to even bigger things. I'm predicting. I'm not saying I have any powers of prediction, but I'm going to make a prediction that I think you're going to go on and do even bigger things in politics. So I want to wish you the best of luck with that going forward. The second thing I'd like to ask you to do, I invite people on my show because they inspire me. I feel I can learn something from them. They motivate me in some way. Those are all the reasons why I invite my guests on. So you fit all of those.
That's a compliment. Thank you.
You're welcome. It comes from the heart. So I think you have the ability to, I know you have the ability to inspire and motivate because you've done that for me. Can you say something into the camera right there to everybody watching and listening, something that they can take with them? You know, life is hard, right? We want to make life better, specifically here in Norway. What can you say to people out there that can maybe guide them, lift them up through their journey? Tell them right there in the camera, please.
Oh, well, that's a hard one, but I like to think of it this way. We have a very limited time on Earth, and we don't know how long that will be. But the day I die, I really want to die and feel like I did something that I can be proud of. And we all have that opportunity to do that. And that's what drives me, basically, and maybe it can drive other people as well.
Beautifully said. I can't add anything to that. Thank you. That's the last thing I'll say. Thank you so much for coming. I've been wanting to do this for a while, and I'm glad I finally reached out, and I'm very glad that you came here. I want to wish you and your party the best of luck going forward. I'll be watching. It's going to be interesting.
Thank you. It was really nice to be here as well, and very comfortable to speak with you. So
thank you.
Thanks.
And this is probably the most English you've spoken in a while,
my God,
I would guess.
Yeah.
Well done.
Thank you. It doesn't flow naturally for me. So thanks.
You did fine.
Yeah.
Okay, that's Maren, everybody. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Remember, go to johnallenpod.com. That's JOHNALANPOD.com. That's where you'll find my audiobook. Click on it and listen to it. Go out there, love and be loved, and enjoy the process. Bye now.